There are worlds waiting, and all it takes is one small step. The Long Earth by Terry Pratchett and Stephen Baxter is the greatest science fiction novel that you have never read. In the modern landscape of BookTube and BookTalk, I think it has become most of our quests to find the greatest novels that there are to read out there. But one of the problems that I find is that every time I go to look up top 10 science fiction novels, top 10 novels of all time, there are a handful that are constantly on those lists, and even the ones that I don't always see on the list are books that I have heard of and have been talked about to death. So it's really rare that a book comes along that I have never heard about before and wows me as much as The Long Earth has. So I was introduced to The Long Earth about a month and a half ago by one of my good friends. I had recently recommended him a book, and in exchange he told me, "Hey, Kenny, I think you're really going to enjoy reading this book called The Long Earth." And he handed it to me, and I saw that it was written by Terry Pratchett, who I've read a little bit of in the past, but I can't say is one of my favorite authors at the moment. Although I did enjoy Mort, I find that his fantasy worlds, or Discworld, tend to be a little bit too silly for my liking. I like things to be a little bit more grounded. And so I was somewhat hesitant, but then I realized that it was co-written by another author named Stephen Baxter, who I had never heard of before. So I'm looking at the book, I'm very intrigued by the title of The Long Earth, and I ask my friend, "All right, so what is it about?" And he goes, "One random day in 2015, a schematic is posted on the internet that is for this device called a stepper box. And with a box, a couple wires, a few transistors, a switch, and a potato, anybody now has the opportunity to travel the infinite multiverse." So if that's not a hook, I don't know what else is. You can definitely see the sort of English humor of Terry Pratchett and Stephen Baxter in that your stepper box only needs a potato to run it, just like you might make a potato light or something like that. I thought that was funny, and I thought that the premise was incredibly interesting. And then he goes, "But our Earth is the only Earth that has humanity in it." Now, there are an infinite amount of Earths going east and west. That's what they call it in the book. Your stepper box has a switch to the left and a switch to the right. And if you click it to the eastern direction, you'll hop over to the next world, Earth East 1, and vice versa. So I was immediately hooked, and I went home and I immediately sat down to read this book, and I think I read it in just a couple of days, which at the time was really fast for me. So that is why today I'm going to sit down and tell you why I think that you should read The Long Earth, and why I think it's one of the greatest science fiction stories ever told, and one that nobody else I really have seen on the internet talk about it before. So the concept initially I found to be very intriguing, because giving anybody on planet Earth essentially the ability to now travel an infinite multiverse of empty Earths seemed like that would totally rock humanity. And when we're thinking about science fiction books, I feel as though most science fiction books are philosophy books that are disguised as novels. Typically, the author is writing about something that they feel very strongly about and are trying to deliver the reader a very specific message about society and, the greater implications of the things we do right and the things we do wrong. And I think that The Long Earth is first and foremost a philosophy book. It tackles the ideas of what would humanity do if suddenly we were given infinite amount of space, infinite amount of resources, and no longer had to worry about some of the existential crises that we do in terms of limited resources or climate change, things like that, because now anybody can get up and they can hop over to a fresh Earth that doesn't suffer from any of these issues. It also tackles the idea of how would some organization, like the United States government, try to corral people, and how other governments would attempt to stop people or levy taxes on these people who are now trying to escape, because you now have the ability to take your stepper box and go to an Earth completely by yourself if you so desire. The concept of that and the way that it's executed in this book is one of the best science fiction stories that I have ever read because it feels so real, and the way that people and government and society react to this sudden change, it seems exactly what humanity would do, and it's just brilliantly executed in this novel. So that's going to move me on to the writing of this book. One of my biggest criticisms with, in particular, classic science fiction is that the writing can be a little bit acerbic. Again, when you're writing about these big concepts and your book focuses more on the philosophy than maybe the characters, and there's a lot of world building, it's easy to get bogged down in all of that. And the digestibility of these science fiction novels can be a little bit difficult at times. I myself enjoy reading books that I don't have to necessarily go back and reread things to understand, particularly in the normal work week when I'm reading a little bit on the bus in the morning or maybe a couple pages before bed. It's not exactly fun for me to pick up Foundation and try to read that and parse out all of the made-up terminology and also parse out what the message is that they're trying to tell me. The Long Earth is very, very well written. It delivers its messages clearly, and it doesn't bog you down with a ton of jargon. There is definitely some jargon in there, but it's funny. And again, the stepper box is such a simple instrument that it's not going to go over your head, and you should very rarely need to go back and reread things to understand. But it does not sacrifice a quality of writing that you will enjoy. I find that, again, hard science fiction sometimes goes to the point where it's not fun to read, and then science fiction that's more pulpy, the story isn't quite there, or the characters are not quite there. And this is like the perfect middle ground for me of digestibility, easy writing, but that flows so well. And I think that the marriage of Terry Pratchett and Stephen Baxter's ideas is incredible. Like I previously mentioned, I find that Terry Pratchett, for my personal tastes, at the moment is a little bit too silly for me. Doesn't mean I'm not going to give it a try in the future, but I have to say that his skill as an author and Stephen Baxter's skill as an author work wonderfully well. The way that I have to assume Stephen Baxter was able to rein Terry Pratchett in on his ideas and maybe some of the more purple prose or silliness that Terry Pratchett is famous of works incredibly well, because although it's a very serious story, it's very interesting, there is a level of levity to the story that is brought, and it's just the perfect mix, in my opinion. The other benefit of the writing in this book is that it is pretty short. I think it's around 350, 400 pages, which, again, something like Dune or Sun Eater can be a little bit overwhelming when you're picking up a book that's like 600-700 pages long. And that's one of the other things that I loved about this book. I mean, I just absolutely flew through it. The Long Earth is the multiverse done right. Today, we are inundated with multiverse properties, books, movies, television shows. It's been the center of the MCU, and it is going to continue to be the focus of the MCU for a couple more years to come. And quite frankly, it is very tiring. I'm sure all of us are sick of multiverse stories, but The Long Earth is the freshest, most intriguing, and most realistic adaptation of what the multiverse could actually look like that I have ever read. By having our Earth be the only Earth with humanity, you clean up so many problems that all of these multiverse stories have, and you really get to explore the speculative science fiction of what one Earth without humans looks like, but also Earths that have taken diverging pathways. So as you jump between the different worlds, if you go further west or you go further east, you start to go further down the probability tree of the things that could have happened to our Earth. And as you get further and further away, you start you start accruing more standard deviations, and things start to get weird and they start to get strange. And Stephen Baxter and Terry Pratchett really get a lot out of playing with this idea of looking at worlds that could have evolved differently from ours, and the kind of fauna that could occupy them, or the sort of states that the Earth could be in, where you might have an ice age, or you might have a heat age, or some other type of world that I won't go into, other than there are a couple Joker worlds out there that are very strange and that defy explanation. But I'll leave you to explore those worlds for yourself. But my favorite is the cue ball. So imagine you found yourself on an Earth that was like an 8-ball in pool. It was completely smooth, hard, black, no flora, fauna, water, or anything to speak of. And the mysteries that you might find there. So now we have the science concepts, the science fiction, the philosophy, and the writing. And my last point here is that The Long Earth has some of the best characters that I have read in fiction. The main character is this guy, Joshua Valiente. He's going on this journey throughout the novel to explore the far reaches of the Long Earth and, go where no man has gone before. Although his character is fairly simple, both authors do a really good job to characterize him in a very quick way, and also give reasons for him not being maybe the most expressive character. And his opinions and thoughts are subtle, but very effective for the story. You also follow a police officer named Monica, and her perspective is just sort of being, a normal person who is in law enforcement and trying to cope with a world that is changing so incredibly fast. And her view of everything that is going on is just fascinating to me. Again, they nail the logical ramifications of something like, if something like this were to happen. And she's a little bit more of like your spunky, a little bit more hard-edged cop kind of character, but she's great. And then the creme de la creme of characters in this book is Lob Sang. Now, this is where Terry Pratchett really gets to flex his muscles as a writer, and this hit the perfect sweet spot for me in terms of fantasy and silliness. So Lob Sang is a supercomputer AI that claims to be the reincarnated soul of a Tibetan motorcycle repairman. And it is his desire to figure out what the purpose of the Long Earth is, how far it goes, and, like all of us, basically what is the meaning of life. But is that really the case? Who is he really? And the mysteries surrounding Lob Sang are just wonderfully written. He's probably one of my favorite characters of all time. And again, I've only been sitting on this book for about a month and a half. In summary, The Long Earth has it all. It's got great writing, a great concept, it's got great characters, and it's succinct. There's literally no fat on this book whatsoever. And so if you are looking for your next great science fiction read, this isn't one about a galactic empire. This one isn't about time travel. It's not about the implications of some sort of, alien invasion or something like that. It's purely speculative science fiction and how that would result in an ever-changing humanity. So that's my plug for The Long Earth. Please read it. Let me know what you think. There are 4 other books in this series, which I won't say their titles because they're kind of spoilers. But yeah, please go pick up this book, read it. You're going to get through it really, really fast. It's wonderful. And it's been a really, really long time since I've read a book that just captured my imagination as much as The Long Earth has and does. I'm currently on the 3rd book in the series. I'm trying to savor them as I go, but I can tell you that it just keeps getting better and better. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Again, please let me know if you end up reading this book. My name is Kenny. This is Win. Please subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And I will see you guys all in the next one. So thank you so much for watching, and have a good one. Bye.